gavel and they'll be quiet.
I will call to order the Personal Policy Curriculum Committee meeting, which was duly noticed on April 27th, 2023, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin 19.84. Notice is hereby given that school board members who are not members of this committee may attend this meeting so as to constitute a quorum of the Board of Education. Any such board member in attendance will be for information gathering only and will not result in direct decision making by the Board of Education at the committee meeting. Okay, we got those all together. Thank you. Moving on to the safety message. As promised, I am going to pedestrian safety and things like that. A little bit different. These are spring safety driving tips, and I'm just going to do a few. But I think they all relate to safety on the road, which helps everyone, including pedestrians and bicyclists, to have a safer experience. Keep an eye out for potholes. This is a daily scenario, but you got to be careful because if you go to swerve those potholes, you could be causing a scene. So I know if you report them, they may likely get filled, but there are a lot. Check tire pressure. Cold winter temperatures often result in lost tire pressure, and take a moment to check your tires to reinflate them if needed. Watch for pedestrian cyclists and motorcycles. Now will be a big increase in people being out. I know I've noticed it, so make sure that you are being especially aware and following those road signs. There was another one that I saw. Avoid puddles. I have an issue with my van where if I get a puddle and I try to turn, like my whole steering locks down, which is scary. Puddles can cause a whole lot of issues for vehicles, and I think as our vehicles become more complex, they can't necessarily deal with some of those natural elements like automobiles of the yesteryear. But hydroplaning is an absolute problem, so be careful for that for sure. And I'm going to leave it at that and save some more tips for another day.
Can't wait.
Oh, I know. We are ready to move forward with 1.4. Oh, I need to adopt the agenda. Sorry, I'm just skipping ahead. 1.3, motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Moving forward to 1.4, staffing update. Mr. Holzman, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to give the committee just a brief update of our staffing and processes. We have 38 certified staff positions posted in WeCan as we speak. The number of applicants range anywhere from 1 to 15. We would probably, on best case scenario, hope we'd have 15 and 20 for each, but we do have at least an applicant for every single space, so it only takes one good one, I say. But and we have 43 postings for non-certified staff, so it is a extremely busy time for us to be working. Now, the majority of the work is done at the building level, so our building principals have teams of interviewees, of which then they will go and with the support of HR, through WeCan and through a process, and through questions, work on selecting a candidate, and then they provide the HR team with a packet that says who they've selected, and then we go through the process of offering positions. So they do that in the midst of probably the busiest time of year, which is May for all of our principals, and likely the most positions we have to hire are at our secondary buildings because they're just larger. So we are working with our team to try to streamline the process a little bit better. One thing we want to be able to do is have almost a this is easy button to apply for some of our non-certified staff jobs. We're trying to work through that. We also want to reduce the number of questions we ask them on WeCan to really some just overarching things to start with. Why do you want to work for the school district of Janesville? And what skills and attributes do you have that would lead to elevated student achievements, right? So those are the general two questions. After that, then there's lots of other things if you want to know about, can I teach science or do I know how to teach kids how to sing? That's a different conversation. So Joyce Greenwood Arts, our interim, and myself have been working on some things. She met with the directors, a few of the directors, and 4 principals last week to kind of go over a presentation that we'll give to the principals this week that I think streamlines the process. Number one, it gives them banks of questions that they're to use, and so they're all going to use this bank of questions. In those questions are really sometimes they're pedagogic pieces, sometimes it's just general good teaching and learning processes. We then want the principals to call the candidates and tell them that they're the best candidate, they're their first choice, and then they will pass that on to HR, who would then make the offer. Right now, the principals make the offer, and if there's any question in the actual money, they have to go back to get permission to either make that change, and then they have to go back to the individual. And so we're trying to streamline that so that we can get it done quicker. Again, I think there's just a lot of work to be done, and I know that some of our directors help support in some of those hard to fill positions, and they're a part of that team as well. And we're working hard to make sure that we do a couple of things. One, during the interview process, they feel good about the way they've been treated and selected to be in our school district. Because if they're not chosen, we want them to feel like this was a good experience and I would consider another option. And if they are chosen, we want them to feel like it was a good experience, and I'll tell somebody else that it was a good experience. I think that's the part of our overarching ideas about making sure that we're providing people with, and some of that becomes the privacy, right? Don't have 3 people sitting in the same room while you're waiting for that next turn to go. Some of it is practice. What are the questions you can ask? Make sure you're asking good questions, not ones that are feel good, but like really are good questions. And there's research behind the strategies and the questions that we ask. So I think, again, we want to make sure that we're working hard on trying to fill these. We're in May, so this is the time. And we'll continue to look. I have a meeting, I think this week, Thursday, to look at a hot spot that we may have to make a decision in May instead of trying to wait to make a decision in August, because if I tell you there's 1 to 15 in May, there's likely 0 to 6 in August. There just isn't lots of people coming out. We've had some success, and you'll see that in the upcoming board agenda, of hiring some folks from area districts who are worried about their longevity and future. I think sometimes that bodes well for us, but 38 certified staff is a lot on May 1st, because there'll be more. There will be more. I know that for a fact. People will choose to go.
What's the reason behind? I don't mean to interrupt, but how does that compare to last year? Do you know? Like 38 compared to what did you have last year? Just as a rough estimate.
I'm looking at the team saying I don't know.
Is it worse or better or about the same?
It's lower right now than it was last year. I think by the time we had new teacher orientation, we had about 80 new certified teaching staff, so.
So you're going to expect it still to rise, like you said, from
Correct,
38
because over the
throughout the
summer there, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We also are working on a process for our non-certified staff, and we aren't as far along with that. And we're committed to getting the certified staff piece done and then trying to transition that to non-certified staff. But the same process happens, and it gets bogged down a little bit internally when we have non-certified staff. And what I mean by that is the principals are still making the calls to make the offers, and sometimes those offers say, wow, I was making $17.25 at my old job. I need to have at least that, and then the principals has to go back to HR to find out if we can do. And so it's the right work. The principals should be the one saying, "We can't wait to have you. I'm really excited," and then not, "Well, I can't offer you that much," right? We want that to be a central office piece. So, but again, I think we're in a good space. We've streamlined the positions we need. We only need one great candidate out of the pool, and we are also cognizant of if someone at Harrison's hiring for a third grade position, and that they find they have two or three candidates, they're going to immediately communicate with the other principals in elementary who are looking for similar candidates to get them on their pool so that we can continue to look for folks. Yeah, we have lots of work to do, but I'm confident that we'll get it done, and the board will see lots of candidates in May and June on the board agenda. Questions?
Yeah, I think you might have answered it, the last part. If we had a candidate that was applying for like a third grade position at Harrison, and they didn't get that position, but they also had interest in, let's say, a position at Edison or Marshall, but that was kind of their secondary choice. How does that work?
Yeah, they would apply for all the positions they're interested in. It's a little bit of a redundancy because the principal at whatever the other building won't know that they're interested unless they apply. So they're going to have to put their name in all the places they're interested in, but it's not hard to do that. WeCan is the system that Wisconsin teachers have used for many decades, and I think probably everybody would say I'd be more than willing to dump it if it wasn't the place that everybody was using, because it isn't really user friendly, but we won't be able to find candidates without putting it on WeCan. Like, we can put it on other places, but that's where everybody goes, and it really hasn't. Maybe because there's been no other competition, it hasn't evolved to the way it needs to. You should be able to say Mark Holzman and click all the jobs, not just in Janesville, but that I want to apply for, and I'll go, and it doesn't. But that's user. We have to use the system because that's the we could use others, but everybody goes there. So. But anyway, my other point being is that, yes, we want our principals to be able to, there's a ranking system, what they use 1 to 5 based on different criteria. We want them to share their top candidates with the other buildings because we want great people. And whether that's a third grade teacher or a sixth grade teacher or a business ed teacher, we want great people, and so we need to share.
Would we if that person didn't, apply for those, let's say you as the principal at Harrison, say, boy, this person was really good, but I had somebody that was just a smidge better, but I know that Wilson needs it. Is there a way that we can give that principal or somebody a heads up to say, hey, they haven't applied, but there's a great candidate out there?
Some of the most difficult work our principals have is calling people who they really like and say, I'm sorry, you didn't get the job. But at that point, it's HR's job and our job to be able to tell them the other options that they have. Have you thought about? We really would be excited. Sometimes as principals, I have another 5th grade opening. Would you be interested in? And so they'll continue to look at those opportunities. But yes, we've had a couple of different opportunities to share with our building principals. Let the good candidates know that we really are interested in you, and let them know all the other options, because we know if we think they're talented, somebody else does as well, and then they'll swoop them up. So
I have a question that kind of goes off of what John said. So do the building principals have a listing or an up-to-date list of all those 38 certified? So they can go back to HR and say, I had a number 2 candidate. I see here on the list, Wilson's looking for a 5th grade, and I just interviewed her or him for the 4th grade opening and they're certified 5th. Do they have that running list so that they're cognizant? Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
yeah, if you open up WeCan, you'll see the positions that are available, and they'll know, again, if you look at, what grade it is, they'll know what's available. So for example, there's a 7th grade social studies teacher at Edison and a 6th grade science teacher at Edison. 7th grade English teacher at Marshall, 7th grade science teacher at Marshall, and an 8th grade math teacher at Marshall. Now, it's possible they filled a couple of these, but in that process, I am really confident that Marshall and Edison are talking, and they may even interview together for the science position, because the difference between a 7th grade science teacher at Marshall and a 7th grade science teacher at Edison's there's probably not any different. So they may say, hey, let's see if we have, I don't know how many candidates they have there, 9 candidates. Let's interview 5 of them, because likely 2 of them are coming from that pool. So that's the kind of work. Washington needs a 4th grade teacher, and I don't know who else needs a 4th grade teacher. And they can look at this and see what's available. Harrison needs a 2nd grade teacher and a 1st grade teacher. Again, so my guess would be there are 12 in one and 15 in the other. My guess would be at Harrison, she's going to hire from that pool. They might be, of the 27 there, 10 of them are maybe 12 are the same. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's likely that when they interview, they're interviewing for a 1st and 2nd grade position, because the skills that they have are very similar, and she's going to make 2 offers on the same day. So we try to do that as much as we can. And if she finds someone that's really good, she likely is going to say to Washington, hey, I've got a 3rd candidate here that you should really consider. So
Typically what they do too, because sometimes you don't know you're going to get an opening later too, is if you have a top candidate, the elementary principals, they'll email all 12 and say, hey, I had a 2nd runner-up who was outstanding if you're looking for a position. So that's how they let them know, through email too, because it may be listed on there, but they may find out a week later they have an opening, so they keep that name with them as a potential candidate to interview. Yeah.
yeah, and I think we will always have some challenges moving forward. We're looking for, I believe, 3 occupational therapists. Is that right, Kim? And I believe we have less than 3 applicants for that position. So, we work with CISA, we work with the area colleges, we work with everybody we can, but those will be hard to fill. And if we can, we'll be celebrating if we can get some. So, that's my report.
Okay. I have a few comments. I appreciate the feedback on We Can, because the feedback that I have received from people in the community who have attempted to use that, they're very frustrated with that process. And I think certified staff understand it, but the non-certified staff, the community members who hear about a para job, who are really interested and feel very challenged with that process, and to the point where I have heard of people actually getting tired of this work, that not that they don't want to do the job, but they feel that there's a lot of hoops that they have to go through for an uncertified position, and lose interest, and then just decide it's not worth their time to have to do, like I've heard multiple times, I don't know where my transcripts are at this point. This is just, and people in the certified world, they understand, they have all of these things, but if maybe something hasn't been on your radar for 5, 10, 15 years, it's a lot. So I'm hearing that. Another thing I'm hearing about We Can, specifically for the non-certified positions, is that the job descriptions are so vague that they're all generic. And whether it's for this school or that school in completely different positions, and they feel that it is really a hindrance in understanding if they even want to apply for that job, because there's no detail that they can get really about what the job's going to do. And so sometimes they think they're applying for one job, and then it's something totally different when they show up, because the job description is it's just like this generic thing. Several community members, I was actually at a parent meeting several weeks ago, and it was a big topic. It was the JACPTA monthly meeting where I am the board representative, and it was quite lengthy, the feedback that they were giving me about their frustration, and that there's probably people in the community who would, be great people, but because they're not necessarily looking, you have to have an account to see the position. And so there are people in the community that really might be great fits, but because they're not looking on weekend, they're not seeing these jobs. And this is feedback that I shared with one of our athletic directors, because they were really struggling and communicating with me about some of the coaching positions that they just were getting no applications for. And I said, listen, there's people in the community that they're never going to be looking on weekend because they're not looking for this job, but they're fully capable and likely would be interested in this job. So we have to find better ways to get that job description out to the community than relying on weekend. And he was really receptive and got it posted on the social media page for that school, and I was really grateful for it, because I have had people now comment to me they've seen that they would never have seen it before. So I think those are things that, our job markets are increasingly monthly more competitive. We have to get really creative and using different ways to advertise. I hear, what is the,
Indeed.
is that the social media thing for jobs? Which one is it? Is it Indeed? LinkedIn. So I don't have a LinkedIn account, and people think it's ridiculous because apparently LinkedIn is like the account. And I've been told this for another organization I'm affiliated with, that we are losing out on opportunities because we are not utilizing LinkedIn. I don't know what the school district, I don't have a LinkedIn account, so I can't even give you my feedback, but people in the community who are up with what's up tell me that that's where you need to be. So I'm just sharing this in terms of staffing, because I want to help us in any way possible. I have another comment. I have recently just caught wind of some staffing things. I saw a job post for a school that I know about, and it was like a PE for that school plus, I'm just going to say Adams and Arise. And I thought, that's really strange. PE hasn't been combined with Arise. And then I was thinking about the staffing plan. That wasn't what was proposed. And so I'm, just starting to get a little feedback from people about, well, now some of those things might be changing. Like, our art teacher is now getting another message. Well, you might now be filling in differently, even though the staffing plan was one teacher for this school, or PE teacher, one teacher. And so I'm seeing that, and I am worried. If we're wanting to keep people, and now if the staffing, I don't know the process. I don't know legally the process. I don't know contractually the process of what happens, but I'm just worried about seeing a staffing plan and now seeing something that isn't necessarily reflecting about what the board was presented with not that long ago. And so I just wanted to share that concern, and I just learned of that today. So I don't know what conversation needs to go through that process, or what.
Yeah, I can respond. So I don't think in the staffing plan we tell you where individual people are going to be. We just tell you that individual people. So, for example, in the elementary buildings, in art, music, and Phi-Ed, there are probably half of the buildings that being in that building is not equivalent to a full-time job. And so they have to travel or be shared with somebody else. That's been going on, I think, for decades. Like, that's the model. So in the one that you referred to, we have had other buildings share with our virtual school, and that's almost always a very attractive share because I don't have to travel. So if you have an elementary building that is smaller, we have what the district considers a full-time equivalency, which is the number of classrooms you teach. And if there's less than that, then generally you have to go somewhere else. So some of our larger buildings have more than one teacher, and some of our smaller buildings don't have one. And it's just how the system of trying to make sure we use people's time the best available. So in some cases, we had somebody who, at one building that you mentioned, left to take a different job in a district, so that's why that job is open. and that job is not full-time by itself. Every teacher there likely has another role besides just that. That has been, we communicated that same role out to all the people, I think the week before or week of, like right around that same time. None of those have changed. They probably changed from the previous year, which is not uncommon. And next year, that will potentially, based on the number of kids in each building and where they are. So, yeah, I mean, we filled everybody up. At times, there will be people who have to travel because they're at smaller buildings, and we try to limit that to the extent we can. But the postings are the same as we had at staffing. Like, we haven't made any changes that I can think of between now and then from from any of our original staffing in terms of in terms of the positions. The people might change based on someone leaving or someone coming, but like if they're shared, they were shared before, and that's the same.
I may have more questions about that, but we can
Sure.
we can do that another time.
Absolutely. Happy to
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, yeah.
In regards to the weekend and specifically the struggles with the non-certified positions, I understand because from a past teacher point of view, I got that you went to weekend, but not necessarily the non-certified. But do the non-certified people have to still, one of the other hurdles besides what you had mentioned, do they still have to provide letters of recommendation? Who does that for non-certified?
We have some work to do.
Okay.
We
Like, like if I want to go work at McDonald's, I don't have to provide
Yeah.
2 letters of recommendation for $15. That's ridiculous, and that's a hurdle for some of these, like a para position. Like you said, I don't know where my transcripts are. Why? I mean, I've literally had people say to me, "Can you write me a letter so I can put it in weekend?" I'm like, "What job are you applying for?" Da 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 da. And I'm like, so then I have to take my time and write a letter so they can submit it via the weekend system.
Yeah, we have some work to do. Like I said, we're working with our building principals right now on the processes that we have. We have a robust process for our certified staff. And part of that's just because it's so timely. This is the time we're hiring all the certified
Yeah.
staff. As soon as we roll that out, we are then working on our non-certified staff. What I have said to our building leaders is, it's not new to me because I haven't done it the other way before. So you have to understand that, the folks who are working, all this has changed to them. Like, this is different than how we've done it before. So I'm also being cognizant of giving them opportunities to give me feedback, because I'm like, you're right. We should just have, like, literally send us your resume and we'll call you. That's my vision. If in fact you don't have a resume, fill out the application and we'll call you. But we're just not there yet. And who's calling and what's the position, and we're going to get better. So in a couple of months, we'll have an easy button, I hope, that says, I want to apply for a non-certified job. Here's what it is. And then if we're interested and we need more information, we'll say, okay, we need more information. And I don't know that we'll need letters of recommendation until we can do background checks or ask you to do reference checks.
Yeah.
So we'll work on that. But I mean, again, this isn't new. We've been doing this for decades.
Oh, yeah, no, I get it.
So
I know.
when I say we're making some changes, it's going to take us some time to get all of those things in the process. But again, the idea is to make sure that people have a really good experience. So then, as Elizabeth is telling us about, hey, there's someone who's frustrated, we want someone to say, hey, it was really easy and I was able to get the job. Or I didn't get the job, but it was really easy and they told me about another job I could apply for. That's the feeling that we want, so that people feel good about working here.
Does the weekend system have a way to eliminate those letters of recommendations for those non-certified staff?
We have the ability to decide how much information they have
Okay.
and different, but with that, we won't eliminate weekend from it because it's been there for a long time, but we have to have a second source. We do use other sources, Indeed and other sources that we do post jobs on social media, but internally we need a space on our website that says apply here, and then you go there. There's a PDF or some kind of a Excel spreadsheet that shows all the jobs that are available. You click on it and you will get to apply. Like literally that easy. It's going to take us some time to get there. But the easier we can make it for people to apply for the job, likely the more job people will get. And we need to make it easy, button.
But I just really want to thank you in the thoughtfulness toward wanting people to have a good experience and feel good about their application process. I mean, that just speaks volumes, and I'm so glad to know that, we're paying attention to all of those details because it's just really important. So thank you. That's not lost on me by any means. Okay, moving on to 1.5, update board policy, compensation. Kevin?
Why, thank you. It's perfect timing because we're in the process of updating this policy. So it's pretty simple. My proposal for consideration is to eliminate compensation for board service. And so I'm requesting this board to forward this idea to the full board for consideration. So in your packet, there's a current board policy. And essentially what I'm getting at is the title would be changed. It would say board member expenses. It would eliminate compensation and the word and it would eliminate those two first paragraphs. One's, a 5-sentence paragraph and the other one's just a single sentence paragraph. But essentially it eliminates compensation. If you do the math, if everyone took this, and I suppose you have to budget for that, it's $22,200 a year for that. And in light of from what I recall, the reason we explored this was to attract new candidates. Well, the last two election cycles, we haven't had any new candidates. So I don't think it helps. I don't think people do service work like school board to be compensated. So therefore, I'm asking this committee to allow this topic to get to the full board for consideration.
I think the reason, I agree with the rationale, was one of the reasons we created and adopted this policy was to attract new school board candidates. Even though it hasn't attracted new school board candidates in the last couple of years, I would not want to get rid of the policy because you don't know what the future holds. There might be a candidate that might be interested 2 or 3 years down the road, and someone says to them during their idea of running, hey, did you understand that there's a board compensation policy to help pay for your child care expenses because you have 2 little kids? I wouldn't want to close that door on that opportunity just because it hasn't occurred in the last couple of years. I firmly believe in leveling the playing field and keeping that playing field level. I think this would make it uneven, and I wouldn't approve that. Even though you would budget for 22,000, we don't use it, but just because the current board members don't use it, the majority of us don't use it, I wouldn't want to close that door, Kevin. I don't see I always think to myself, if we voted to push this forward to the full board and they say, yep, we don't need it anymore, you're closing a door. I don't know what the upside of closing a door would be as opposed to keeping it open, even if we never use it. At least the opportunity still exists. That's my 2 cents.
I would agree with Lisa. I think the makeup of the board changes every year. The option, it's certainly, I don't think, a budgetary issue, and I think if there's anybody that runs for school board to be compensated for what the compensation rate is, then, they're missing the boat. However, I agree with Lisa that, there may be candidates in the future. I think when I looked at this and I started looking around, at Madison and different places, most places are compensated. We have an option from a budgetary perspective for members not to take the compensation, so I don't think that becomes so much of an issue. And I think, it could very well become an issue several years from now, and then you end up going right back to the board and saying, okay, let's figure out how to attract people. So I agree with Lisa in terms of changing the policy and getting rid of the compensation.
Motion. So, I will anyway. I guess, in my mind, I made, and it's an idealistic point of view, but I feel that every dollar that we spend, and I know we like to rationalize, well, that's not very much on a $130 million budget, which is true. However, I think this board needs to be poised to show the public that we can incrementally show that we're serious about using our dollars, all our dollars, wisely. And I don't think this is using dollars wisely. In my 18-plus years here, I have yet to run into any candidate for school board that has told me, gosh, if I could just get $200 a month, then I would run. So, therefore, I'll make a motion to eliminate compensation for school board members.
I don't know what to do, but I was gonna say something. Can I say something? I don't know.
You could second the motion and then say something, have discussion, or you could just pause, wait. If there's no second, then there isn't anything.
And it dies, yeah.
But you're the chair, so you can pretty much do whatever you want, to be honest with you.
You can kill it, that's fine.
I kind of was wanting to weigh in. I appreciate, Kevin, your sentiments behind this. And I don't know that we need to get in who accepts or who declines. I do know many people decline. I do know that, my decision to join the board had nothing to do with financial means. I do know it would be tragic for me if my financial situation changed such that I no longer was able to serve on the board because I needed to do something different with my life, because this is some of the most significant professional work that I have been affiliated with. And I understand that this board has been a volunteer board, and many on this board still serve as a volunteer. It's a very, very important job, and one that I think that we all take very seriously, and it's not one that we just show up to if we want to. And as such, I think it's important that we are mindful of the value that we are providing our community. Most school districts, this is a paid position, and I would just think, I like to look at the lens in my life of, not from my place of privilege, but for what is an opportunity for all. And Commissioner Herta's comments on leveling the playing field, I try to look at not what I need, but what somebody else might need. And again, if we remove it today, it's hard to know what we might see 2 years. But I want to say, I am a new school board member, and Commissioner Hannawal is as well. And last year we did have two new candidates running. It just so happened that the same people were reelected, and I don't think that's wrong. And I happen to think that maybe the reason why there weren't new candidates this year is because the people running were really fantastic. And the community just wasn't like needing to make big changes, but for so many reasons, I think we're not in a situation where we're having to, but none of us are here for the money. And I think, if we stay mindful of that, it's important to do. Yeah.
Kevin, I completely understand where you're coming from, and you and I usually tussle over certain topics, and this might be one of them, and I like that. I like that we can discuss and have conversation over this. But something that has always been at the back of my mind since this came back to PPC and it became more to the forefront of my mind when we had our workshop. Remember our changing demographics in Janesville? We have a changing demographic. I would hope that our changing demographic would, and I don't know if they're listening out there, I would hope that they would consider running. Because a lot of people think, I couldn't do that job. I know nothing about that. I don't think I would have the ability to do it. I'm telling you right now, I know nothing about being on the school board when I ran, but I learned. I sat in front of this chair, in front of this microphone, terrified for the first couple of meetings and probably didn't say a peep. But you can do it, but some people might need a little bit of a lift to be able to do that. And this might provide, i.e., childcare for them to be able to have the courage to actually run. And I wouldn't want to close that door, but when I look at, was it 55% of free and reduced lunch? Those people, those little kiddos have parents that are our community members, and we're here to serve them. And if one of them wanted to have the ability to run, but they couldn't financially, and this little means would help them and change some of the dynamics and the faces behind this, I would say, yeah, go get them. Go get them. And I don't want to close that door on them because they are a large portion of our school district.
Okay, so you made a motion. Your motion is to change this policy and remove the compensation, correct? We need a second for it to move forward. Hearing none. So, it's dead. Is that?
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay. All right. Okay, so we move forward then. On to the next thing. Thank you, Kevin. 1.6, motion to approve revised Neola policy evaluation of district administrator and send to the full board. That would be wonderful.
Kathy and I looked at this and we wanted at least a quarterly touch base evaluating the superintendent at some level. So April and October. April is the summative. It will go on the calendar, and that is at the time the board would get a self-eval from the superintendent and do their own evaluation. I'll compile it. And then same thing in October. It's just more of a formative. The documents are all included in there and what we would use for those evaluations. April would be more of an informal discussion. But at least we're touching base. Nothing formal that anybody has to prepare except the 2 times a year. And then putting July in there for reviewing goals for the upcoming school year, just so there's something documented about doing that and it doesn't get lost. But that's kind of the thought process, is having a quarterly touch base and some kind of evaluation with 2 more formal ones, April and October.
Any questions, comments?
Thank you for working on that with Kathy to make it a little bit more streamlined. I appreciate that, and a little bit more impactful for both the school board and the superintendent. And I like the goals on July because that's when our fiscal year starts, so it kind of kicks off the, yeah, thank you.
I received a note from Kathy about this, and she was really glad to be able to work with you. And she said the request came from a WASBA breakout session that shed some light for her on her current practices. So I'm so grateful. It's really nice for our board to be able to have people work on things for us all to move forward. So thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. So now we are moving to 1.7.
Move them to the board.
Move them to the board. There's a whole bunch of Neola policies there.
Fascinating reads.
They were, it's a lot.
Did that Friday night.
It's a lot.
I'm gonna go through each one? Yes.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I told you the timeline for tonight, Kevin. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. 1.8, announcements and updates. I know that we have our PPC plan meeting, I believe, next Monday. Yes? Okay. So if there's anything that anyone is wanting to make sure that PPC is getting on the agenda for up and coming months, we do have a list of things that we're planning going forward. So even if I'm not the committee head for PPC, I'm just putting out there, since this has not all been assigned yet. Michelle, I don't know if you're hearing that. Okay, we're making sure though that we have things in place. I mean, we were even going into like September already, just getting things planned out. So that is all set in stone. But you can always reach out to me via email, and
Yeah,
oh, I
you did.
appreciate it. I had no idea what I was doing.
See,
I'm
but you-
going back to Commissioner Herda's comments. I came in here and I had no idea what I was doing. I think I said at the start of being leading PPC, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I often tell people I have no idea what I'm doing. But when
Let
you
you know.
surround yourself with good people who are here to lift each other up, we know we can make a lot of great progress together. And I think we're a fantastic place. We're in a fantastic place to be, and I love the work that I get to do here. So thanks for being on this committee with me. I don't know who's going to be on it in the next round, but I would love for you all to be here because I think you're a great group of people. Any other announcements?
Next meeting?
Our next meeting is June. It's June 5th. That's my birthday.
Is it?
Yeah.
We'll have to bring cake and cupcakes and ice cream.
Okay.
June 5th? Okay.
All right.
Oh,
Yay.
yeah.
Maybe you won't have an agenda.
I don't know. Okay. All right,
Okay.
guys. All right. We are adjourning. Thank you.